If you think the worst thing your parents can do is forget your gift, try watching them throw you and your 80-year-old grandpa into a blizzard. I thought I was just a broke-line cook, drowning in grease and regret, until iron gates swung open and 50 staff bowed to him as the owner. My parents thought kicking us out on Christmas would silence us forever. Instead, it handed me the match to burn down their stolen empire, legally, publicly, and on live television. My name is Phoebe Gray. I am 28 years old, and until the night my life shattered and reformed into something terrifying and new, I was a line cook at the Rusty Lantern Grill. It was the kind of place where the smell of stale fryer oil became a part of your soul. A grimy perfume no amount of scrubbing could ever wash away. I reeked of that grease the night I guided my dented 10-year-old sedan through a blinding Denver snowstorm, headed for the gilded cage of Crestview Heights. My wiper blades fought a losing battle, screeching against the glass with a hopeless rhythm. The heater coughed out lukewarm air that tasted of burning dust. My hands, raw and chapped, knuckles split from harsh soap and icy air, were clenched white on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to return to my cramped, lonely apartment in Eastfield. But I kept driving because of a single, fragile thread, a phone call from my grandfather. Arthur Hale's voice, 2 days prior, had been thinner than I remembered, like parchment worn soft by time. He had pleaded with me. "Just this Christmas, kid. Sit next to your old grandpa one more time." How could I refuse? He was 82, trapped in a 10,000 square foot mausoleum, and the only person who made its vast, cold spaces feel small enough to breathe in. I pulled up to the imposing iron gates of my parents' estate. The house was a monstrosity of stone and glass, glowing with a golden, hateful warmth in the winter night. A beacon of wealth that sneered at the storm. This was the kingdom of Graham and Vivian Hale. My father, a CEO who saw skylines as profit margins. My mother, who polished the family's image to a predatory shine. A valet in a uniform that cost more than my rent looked at my car with naked disdain. I handed him the keys, a silent challenge, and stepped through the massive oak doors. The warmth was a physical blow, carrying scents of expensive pine, roasting meat, and cloying perfume. The foyer teemed with life. A string quartet, the chatter of politicians and elites. Crystal chandeliers dripping light onto marble floors. A 20-foot spruce stood guard, adorned with ornaments I knew were European hand-blown glass. I was drowning in isolation. My second-hand black dress fit poorly, and beneath the hem, I wore my sturdy, non-slip work shoes. I tucked my scarred hands behind my back, a ghost at the feast, ignoring the glances from family friends who quickly looked away, as if my poverty were a contagion. I found him tucked away in a corner of the dining room, far from the roaring fireplace. Grandpa Arthur sat in his ancient wheelchair, a monument to neglect. He wore a moth-eaten beige cardigan and wool trousers from another decade. He looked shrunken, apologetic for the space he occupied. "Arthur," I whispered, kneeling beside him. His head lifted, his cloudy eyes clearing for a glorious moment. A smile broke across his face, carving through the lines of age and sorrow. "Fee," he rasped, his paper-thin hand covering mine. "You came. I promised, didn't I?" For an hour, we were spectres. I fetched him sparkling water. Whiskey was forbidden by Vivian, a control disguised as care. We watched the pageant unfold. My father held court by the fire, swirling amber liquid, laughing a booming, hollow laugh. My mother drifted through the crowd like a shark in silk, her smile a tight, practiced weapon. Then came dinner. We were banished to the far end of the endless mahogany table, the realm of disappointments. The table was set with Belgian linen so white it hurt. The main course was roast duck with a cherry reduction, its aroma a cruel taunt to my empty stomach. Arthur struggled. His Parkinson's was worsening, a truth my parents willfully ignored. His fork clinked loudly, awkwardly, against the fine china as he tried to cut his meat. The conversation stuttered. "Let me help, Grandpa," I murmured. "I can do it," he insisted, a flicker of his old pride. He reached for his wineglass. I saw the tremor begin in his wrist, a violent, uncontrollable spasm. It happened in heart-stopping slow motion. His hand jerked, hitting the crystal bowl. Dark red Cabernet splashed across the pristine white tablecloth, spreading like a bloodstain. The glass shattered against the charger plate, a sound like breaking bones. Cherry sauce followed, splattering the centerpiece. The quartet stopped. The laughter died. A heavy, suffocating silence smothered the room. Every eye was upon us. I grabbed a napkin, dabbing frantically, my heart a wild drum against my ribs. "It's okay," I whispered to Arthur, who stared at the stain in horror. "It's just wine. Just a cloth." Vivian stood. Her chair scraped like a nail on a coffin. She didn't look at me. Her gaze was fixed on Arthur, and the mask of the perfect hostess dissolved, revealing pure, undiluted venom. "Look what you've done," she said, her voice a low, carrying whip. "Vivian, it was an accident," I said, standing to shield him. "An accident." She laughed, a brittle, cruel sound. "It is an accident, Phoebe. A walking, talking disaster. Look at this mess. This linen was custom ordered." Graham strode over, his face flushed with drink and irritation. "For God's sake, Dad, can you not get through one meal without embarrassing us?" Arthur looked down at his lap. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "My hand, it just slipped." "It always slips," Vivian snapped, performing for the guests. "Do you see what we deal with? We took him in. We gave him a home when he had nothing. And this is the gratitude we get? He's useless. Just a useless, senile old man who destroys everything he touches." My blood turned to ice. The injustice of it was a physical ache in my throat. "Stop it!" My voice shook, but it cut through the tension. "Don't you dare talk to him like that." Graham turned his glacial gaze on me. "Sit down, Phoebe. Don't make a scene." "You're the ones making a scene," I retorted, my hands balling into fists. "He has a medical condition. He's your father, Graham." My father let out a scoff that was all contempt. He turned to his audience, slipping into his storyteller mode. "Let me tell you about my father. This man never built a thing in his life. I found him in a filth-ridden rental, starving. I saved him. I gave him dignity. And for 20 years, he's done nothing but eat my food and drag this family's name through the mud." "That's a lie," Arthur whispered, his voice too frail to carry. "He's a prop for you," I shouted, the words tearing from a place of deep, festering pain. "You wheel him out for the magazines, then shove him in a back room like garbage. You act like a hero, but you're just a bully, preying on an old man." Vivian's face went bone white, her eyes wide with shock at my audacity. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. "After everything we've given you, you've given me nothing." I stepped fully between them and Arthur. "I want you to apologize to him, right now, for calling him useless." The silence was tomb-like. The senator studied his shoes. The bankers admired their cufflinks. Graham stepped into my space. He smelled of expensive scotch and raw rage. "You want an apology?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Yes." He slapped me. It wasn't a theatrical slap. It was a hard, brutal backhand that connected with my cheekbone with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my skull. My ear rang. I stumbled back, grabbing the table to stay upright. Gasps rippled through the room, but not a single person moved. Not one. Graham stood over me, chest heaving, adjusting his cuff as if he'd swatted a fly. "Get out!" he snarled. I touched my cheek. It was on fire. "Get out!" he roared, pointing at the door. "Security! Get these two parasites out of my house!" Two large men in dark suits emerged from the shadows. They looked hesitant. Graham turned his fury on Arthur. "And take your old man with you. If you love him so much, go live in the gutter with him. See how long you last without my money. You're both cut off. Done." Arthur looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "Phoebe, leave me here. Don't lose your family for me." I looked at Graham's sneer. I looked at Vivian, already signaling the servers to clear the mess, to erase us. I wiped my mouth. No blood, but I tasted copper. "I'm not losing my family, Grandpa," I said, my voice steady and low. "I'm leaving it." I grabbed the handles of his wheelchair. A security guard stepped forward. "Don't touch him," I warned. My ice must have held something feral, because he lowered his hand and stepped back. "I'll do it myself." I turned the wheelchair. The squeak of its wheel was the only sound in the cavernous room. We began the long, shameful walk of the damned, past my uncle, suddenly fascinated by his salad, past neighbors who used to wave. Not one of them met my eye. Their silence was a chorus of complicity. Graham yelled after us, his voice echoing in the vaulted ceiling. "Don't think you can come crawling back when the rent is due, Phoebe. You are nothing without us. Nothing." I didn't look back. I pushed the heavy doors open with my shoulder, and the brutal cold assaulted us. The snow was falling harder now, a white curtain erasing the world. I parked his chair on the portico. "Wait here," I said, and ran to get my car. As I helped Arthur into the passenger seat, the balcony doors above us opened. Vivian stepped out, wrapped in white fur, holding a glass of champagne. She looked down at us as if we were insects. "You forgot something," she called out. She signaled a terrified maid who held a bundle of fabric and a black trash bag. "Throw it," Vivian commanded. The maid hesitated. "I said throw it," Vivian screamed. The maid dropped the items. My wool coat fluttered down into the slush. The trash bag hit the steps with a heavy thud, splitting open to spill Arthur's spare clothes, his heart medication, and an old frame photo of my grandmother. "Trash belongs with trash," Vivian said. She turned her back and walked inside, slamming the doors. I stood there for a second, snow melting on my burning cheek, a rage so pure and hot igniting in my chest that it almost kept me warm. I scrambled to gather our scattered dignity. I got Arthur into the car, lifted the wheelchair into the back, and climbed into the driver's seat, slamming the door on that golden, hateful world. The silence inside was sudden and deafening. Arthur turned to me, his lips tinged blue. "I'm sorry, kid," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the iron gates. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. "Don't you apologize," I said through gritted teeth. I started the car. They just lost the only two decent people in that house. I hit the gas. We drove through the open gates, leaving the golden glow behind, disappearing into the white, howling void. We were homeless, broke, and had nowhere to go. But as I watched that mansion fade in the rearview mirror, I didn't feel fear. I felt the first fierce spark of a fire that would one day burn the entire world to the ground. The radiator in my Eastfield apartment had a personality, and it was a furious one. It hissed and clanged at 3 a.m. like a demon trapped in the pipes. My home was a fourth-floor walk-up that city inspectors had forgotten. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and despair. The view was a majestic panorama of alleyway dumpsters. It was a universe away from Crestview Heights, but it was ours. I'd made a bedroom for Grandpa Arthur in the corner of the living room, which was also the kitchen. A fold-out cot from a thrift store, plastic crate nightstands, and blankets for privacy. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," I said, wringing my hands. "The mattress is lumpy. It's drafty. I'll tape plastic over the window." Arthur looked up from a tattered paperback. "Fee, stop it," he said, his voice firm. "It's terrible," I insisted, gesturing at the water-stained ceiling. He closed his book. "Listen. I've slept in luxury, hotels, and in the back of a truck in a snowstorm. You know the difference? The company." He gestured around the cramped room. "This is the warmest palace I've ever lived in, because nobody here is waiting for me to die." I turned to the humming, rattling refrigerator to hide my face. Inside, 3 eggs, half an onion, and smuggled potato soup from the diner. Rent in 6 days. Electric bill overdue. Tips were garbage. "I can make a frittata," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Gourmet," Arthur chuckled. "If anyone can make old bread taste like 5 stars, it's you." I cooked with a desperate intensity. We ate at the wobbly table, knees almost touching. It wasn't enough. I took a smaller portion, pushing the rest onto his plate, claiming I'd eaten at work. He ate it all, and for a moment, the gnawing fear receded. But it always came back. My life became a blur of exhaustion. Up at 4:30 a.m. to open the rusty lantern, 8 hours of burning my forearms on the grill, smelling of bacon grease and sanitizer. Then a run to the bus for a shift at the Copper Fox dive bar. Weekends, overnight dishwashing. 80 hours a week to keep the lights on and buy Arthur's heart medication. The pills alone were $300 a month. This poverty tiredness is a heavy grey fog that seeps into your soul. I fell asleep on the train, jerking awake at my stop, heart racing. My hands were a map of cuts and cracks, wrapped in bandages that reopened every morning. One night, I came home at 2 a.m., my key fumbling in the lock. I crept inside. Arthur was in his cot, breathing evenly. I went for water, leaning against the counter, my legs throbbing. I looked over. His eyes were closed, but his breathing hitched. He was awake, pretending to sleep so I wouldn't feel guilty. I went to my mattress on the floor, pulled the thin duvet over my head, and cried silent, ragged sobs. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was on the phone with the electric company, pacing the bathroom, whispering, "Please, I get paid Friday. Just 3 more days. Don't shut it off. My grandfather is sick. He needs the heat." The drone on the other end was implacable. "I can pay $50 now. Just $50, please." I hung up, defeated. They'd given me until Friday at noon. I walked out. Arthur was at the window, staring at the brick wall. "Phoebe," he said, his voice low. "I thought you were napping." "I heard you." He turned. His face was grey, older than I'd ever seen. "We can't do this." "We're fine," I lied. "Stop lying to me," he snapped. The first time he'd raised his voice. "I'm bleeding you dry. I know what the pills cost. I know the rent. You're working yourself into an early grave for an old man on his way out. There's a state facility. Don't! I shouted, dropping to my knees beside his chair, grabbing his cold hands. Never. Do not ever say that again. It's logical, Phoebe. I don't care about logic, I cried, tears hot on my face. They threw us out like garbage. They wanted us to break. If I put you in a home, they win. Graham wins. You're the only family I have. We stay together. That's the deal. He looked at me for a long time, his chin quivering. He pulled a hand free and brushed a tear from my cheek. You're too stubborn for your own good. We're Hales, I sniffed. Stubborn is all we've got. We found shards of joy, necessary for survival. I tried to teach him to use a streaming app on my cracked phone. Swipe this way for movies, I explained. He squinted. Why are the pictures so small? This actor looks photoshopped. In my day, you had to look like a cowboy to play a cowboy. You're judging the thumbnails, Grandpa. Just pick one. He tapped the screen. Nothing. Tapped harder. It's a touch screen, not a doorbell. I laughed. We watched an old black and white film, huddled on the cot with popcorn, the phone propped on a milk carton. For 2 hours, the cold apartment vanished. Another night, I was peeling potatoes, exhausted. Give me that peeler, Arthur demanded. Your hands are shaking. You'll cut yourself. I've peeled more potatoes than you've been alive. Give it. I handed it over, nervous. His hands wobbled, but then he found a rhythm. Slow, agonizingly slow. But he peeled one, then another. He looked up with a triumphant grin that took 20 years off his face. See? Still got the touch. We celebrated with cookies. I was so tired, I forgot them in the oven. The smell of burning sugar hit us as the smoke detector shrieked. I scrambled onto a chair, fanning it with a towel, while Arthur struggled with the window latch, smoke billowing out. It's an ambush, he yelled, waving his cardigan. We finally silenced the alarm and slumped down, coughing, laughing until we cried. We ate the non-burnt centers of the blackened cookies. They tasted like victory. During quiet afternoons, I saw who he really was. Our door was often open for a draft. Arthur would be in the hallway, talking to Leo, the 6-year-old from 4B, whose mum worked 2 jobs. See, Leo, Arthur said, patient, respectful. If you fold the cardboard against the grain here, it creates a structural beam. That's how you make the roof strong. He was a teacher, a creator, not a useless old man. It made my heart ache. But there were mysteries. Late at night, I'd wake to see a light on. Arthur hunched over a graph paper pad, drawing lines, angles, measurements. He'd hide it if I moved. He stared at his old pocket watch, circling dates on the calendar. Too many for doctor's appointments. Then, the envelope. A Tuesday morning. I was rushing for work. A thick, creamy white envelope, no stamp, slid under the door. Arthur wheeled over with surprising speed, snatched it off the floor, and shoved it into his cardigan pocket. What was that noise? I asked. Just the wind rattling the door, he said, jaw tight, hand clutching his pocket, knuckles white. Grandpa, are you okay? I'm fine. Go to work, Phoebe. You'll be late. Over the next weeks, he asked strange, hypothetical questions. A test. If you could go anywhere, if money was no object, would you leave Denver? I don't know. Somewhere warm. Why? Just thinking. He paused. And the cooking? Do you love it? Or just do it for the pay? I love the food. I hate the grease and the screaming boss. But making something, feeding people, I like that. In the end, justice arrived the same way winter does. Cold, slow, and unstoppable. My parents built their empire on lies, theft, and the suffering of people who had nothing. For years they hid behind luxury, charity galas, and false smiles. But the night they threw us into the snow was the night they sealed their fate. When the truth finally came to light, broadcast across the Christmas Eve gala they'd hoped would glorify them, their empire crumbled in front of everyone. The evidence was undeniable. The arrests were immediate. And the people they had crushed for decades finally got to see the truth. Graham and Vivian lost everything. Their company, their reputation, their freedom. They went from giving speeches under chandeliers to standing in handcuffs under federal lights. And me? I didn't win because I inherited a billion-dollar empire. I won because I chose justice over silence. I chose to break the cycle instead of continuing it. 1 year later, I sat beside my grandfather on the snowy balcony of Hale Rest Manor. He was weaker, but at peace. All the secrets finally aired, all the weight finally gone. He pressed his old, cracked Halecraft badge into my hand and told me the words I will never forget. You broke the cycle. Build something good. My family had once tried to bury me in the snow. Instead, that cold night led me to the truth, to my real heritage, and to the strength I never knew I had. They lost everything but their guilt. We lost our illusions and gained something far more valuable, a future worth building.